The opinions and suggestions expressed on the following program are solely those of the participants and not necessarily endorsed by program sponsors or any radio station, media company, or platform broadcasting this program. The following program is a product of Causeway LLC. The information in this broadcast is not intended as investment, tax, or financial advice. Matthew Moore is not a licensed investment advisor and speaks solely from his experience and opinions. All information in this broadcast is for entertainment or educational purposes only. Matthew Moore, Causeway LLC, and the company or platform broadcasting this program is not responsible for the success or failure of any person's investment decisions or purchases. Matthew Moore, Causeway LLC, and the company or platform broadcasting this program makes no and expressly disclaims all representations, warranties, and guarantees with respect to this broadcast and its sponsors. Investing in any market is inherently risky and can be financially dangerous. Invest at your own risk.
Government officials will continue to inform as this story unfolds.
Welcome to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore, the Bitcoin-focused radio show that's waking the masses to the fiat money Ponzi scheme. Money is changing, and your freedom is at stake. So stick around and learn how to empower yourself for this new digital age. Now, here's your host, Matthew J. Moore.
And welcome, America. Yeah, it's right. It's the right time. It's the right spot. I want to welcome all of you who are the citizens of Earth. That's right, because we make this show for everybody. No matter where you are or who you are, I want to welcome every single one of you, Bitcoin lovers, newbies, and experts. You are now listening, that's right, to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. You tuned into the right spot because we are one of the only syndicated radio shows dedicated to that topic known as Bitcoin, a show where you will learn things like money, liberty, history, technology, energy. It's all encompassing. So stick around because I guarantee you're going to learn something significant. In fact, it might just change your life. But if you were wondering, what is this all about? Or what are we going to look at today? What are we going to talk about? Well, if you're anything like us, you might be looking at the state of the world and you might be saying, what in the world, no pun intended, is going on? I mean, specifically when it comes to monetary and fiscal policies, we're going to dive into that. But it doesn't matter, let me ask you, does it matter like who's in office? It doesn't matter if they're red, blue, or what party they're on, what team they're on. It just seems like we get stuck and we're all on this sinking Titanic and everybody's trying to change captains of this sinking ship, but we're hopefully gonna jump into a lifeboat and get out of the sinking abyss. But the truth is, we are in uncharted territory. The world has never been here, collectively, that is. And so we're going to ask the question, how do we navigate what is to come? Will government bonds still be around? Should you get rid of your fiat currencies? And how does Bitcoin actually fit into that picture? Well, today we have a giant of a guest who is going to, I would say, shed some light on this for us, and he might bring some new perspective, but he is a returning guest on the show, but this time he is joining us on our syndicated version of the show because we started this party in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but we are now in LA, Atlanta, Seattle, and even if you're listening online, we're global. So get ready for a great conversation, and we're going to dish out some awesome content. Unfortunately, I'm so sad to say that my co-host is not here. I told him to show up, but you know what? He stood me up like a bad date. But Eric, I forgive you. The guy who's sitting in the chair next to me, though, my producer, Brian LaRue, he is the guy that makes me sound wonderful, crisp to the ear. Brian, thanks for being here, man.
Hey, Matt. It's a pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank
man.
you.
Well, hey, you created those awesome intros and outros and the cool sound effects for our show. If people wanted to hire you for your excellent audio work, where would they go and what do you have to offer?
Absolutely. You can go to Beyond You Productions, spelled exactly how it sounds, beyondyouproductions.com, and feel free to look at my website, look at my work. I'd love to work with you.
Yeah, man. Well, yeah, I would concur. So, and we're also, I might add, we're recording this show. That's right, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, at Blue Studio, which is part of Sooner Marketing Solutions. In fact, they just served us some lattes. Wonderful customer service. So if you got any marketing needs, or maybe you want to create a podcast or a radio show like we're doing, go hit up SoonerMarketingSolutions.com. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and get this thing rolling. Like we were saying, today's guest is not just a hero in the Bitcoin world, but he's also a returning guest. He is a Bitcoin strategist who has many, many years of experience in global debt markets and risk management. His name is Greg Foss, and he is joining us today to give us, no joke, an IQ test in risk management. So, Greg, welcome back to the show, man. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say today.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you guys again.
Awesome, man. Well, let's kick it off right here. Let's just jump right into the weeds. Okay, so traditional radio, it's like casting a wide net. And we're reaching a lot of people who may be unfamiliar with Bitcoin. That's why we do this show. We kind of see ourselves as a type of evangelist when it comes to Bitcoin. But there might be people who don't know who Greg Foss is. Can you start off by giving us a summary of who you are and a little bit about your career?
I sure can. Well, thank you again. Firstly, I'll congratulate your listeners for tuning in because they obviously have curiosity about something that will change the world. Who is Greg Foss? Firstly, I'm a Canadian. I studied engineering at McGill University in Montreal. But I was lucky enough to go on and do an MBA at an Ivy League school in your great nation, Cornell University, upstate New York. And I changed from a mechanical engineer to a financial engineer and a career on Bay Street and Wall Street, primarily as a hedge fund manager with a credit focus. I traded debt and restructured debt my entire 30-year career.
I'm telling you what, that's impressive. And if you want to do some more research on Greg Foss, just Google him. You're going to see all sorts of fun stuff. But Greg, can you set the stage for us? Why is the world in this uncharted territory when it comes to global debt? You're obviously an expert in this. What is so different about today? Is it truly different than any other time in history?
Absolutely. And the answer is purely because of the magnitude of our debt burden globally. So I try to look at things from a macro focus. Globally, total global debt to total global GDP. So comparing your total debt burden, global debt burden to your tax base, essentially, because your tax base is on your GDP. Total global debt is 4 times the size of global GDP or global sales. You can't run or sustain that type of debt burden without debasing the currency. And it's very simple mathematics. We have never been at this level of a debt burden. And I like to frame it as the currency, the fiat currency, becomes the error term to solve this debt spiral. And by saying it becomes the error term, they have to, when I say they, central banks have to print money or QE, quantitative easing infinity, in order to solve this mammoth debt burden. You bring up great points there, but we've got to ask ourselves this question. You're bringing up some pretty obvious stuff, but it just seems like we live in a world of zombies who are just walking around and acting like everything is okay. So what are people not seeing when it comes to this? Why is it so hard for not only the average Joe to catch on, but even professionals in the financial world? I mean, maybe there's some people in the financial world that are really starting to catch on, but is everyone just in a fiat trance? What's going on here? Well, it's a great question. Firstly, you have to, for the average Joe, this is not taught in school, right? I went through 6 years of very intense training in school, top business school in the United States, and I was never taught what fiat money is, okay? And I believe it to be the case today. Most people do not even understand what fiat currency is. I would wager a bet that if you asked the average person in the United States what the US dollar is backed by, at least half of them would say it's backed by gold. Now, as we all know, that actually ended in 1971 when President Nixon took the US dollar off the gold standard. What fiat currency actually is debt. And here's the craziest thing. They cannot teach you this in school, because once you understand that fiat money is debt, then you start questioning the entire banking system. And once you question the entire banking system, you start to question Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan. Right. And Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan are levered 25 times to their risk-absorbing capital base or equity. 25 times. If that was a standalone household, Jamie Dimon would rip away your credit cards because you are running your household irresponsibly. But It's a bank. It's always been 25 times levered. That's the way the fiat Ponzi system works. And congrats on your introduction, by the way. Yes, it is a fiat Ponzi. So why don't people understand it? Because Jamie Dimon can't come out and tell people that his bank is a Ponzi. So they accept the status quo.
Not only that, but your average financial advisor, if they were like, oh yeah, let's take a look at your portfolio, and oh, by the way, did you know all of this wealth is just a Ponzi scheme? You know what I mean? That's bad for business.
So Matt, can I interrupt?
Yeah,
Sorry,
go ahead.
But and here's the simple thing. So if printing money or QE infinity created true wealth, there would be no poverty left in the world, wouldn't there?
Right.
Now that statement is attributed to a number of people, including Rand Paul. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure who said it, but it's absolutely true. So people don't understand. They accept printing of money as a natural reflex, if you will.
Right. It's almost like you're born into a prison cell, and that's all you've ever known.
Correct.
So, well, let's dive into this. Okay, so we are here. We're here, big fans of Bitcoin and gold, hard money, sound money in general. But they're both, Bitcoin and gold have been viewed as a inflation hedge. But why did both of them perform horrible over the last year? I mean, if inflation is going to be a problem and has been a problem, is this price and market reaction all based on the Fed's policies instead of real inflation data? Because we know that even recently they're just now changing how they're going to measure the CPI. So what is this all about?
Well, let's be careful. So first of all, you have to extend your time frame, and I too am a hard asset fanatic, but hard assets measured over a long time frame are much more steady than a short time frame. So last year, yes, it was a difficult year for both assets, but remember, Bitcoin in particular is a hedge on monetary inflation, not on price inflation. So while the CPI went up, monetary inflation was held back. And that was reflected in different things like the Dixie and everything. So it was a shorter time frame. Let's be careful and understand that you have to measure this over a longer time frame. This is essentially a hedge and insurance that you want to hold for, in my opinion, decades. Don't get shaken out by shorter term non-performances, as you might term it. This is pure mathematics. You need to hold this over the long term as insurance against the fiat Ponzi.
Yeah, no, that's excellent points, and it's what I try to communicate to some of my friends when they ask that question. But, a lot of people who are watching this intently, like I have been over the last couple of years, especially over the last year, as the Fed has taken a very hawkish approach to its policies, a lot of people were sitting on the edge of their seat going, hey, when's that Fed pivot going to come? Because they can't keep going down this road forever before something breaks. But, I'm actually shocked. I didn't really think that they could keep going at the rate they are or have without blowing something up. And maybe something has blown up behind the scenes and we just don't know. I mean, what's your take on this?
Well, I agree with that. I'm coming from the financial world and having lived through 4 different financial crises. You never know, there's never just one cockroach, and you never know exactly which snowflake will cause the avalanche, right? But I have a sneaking suspicion there'll be a major systemically important financial institution like a Credit Suisse, which, by the way, results are horrible. There's a bank run happening on Credit Suisse right before our eyes. That type of event, which causes counterparty risk to explode within the financial system, that's the type of event that will, it smolders for a while, and then all of a sudden it's like a bug hitting your windshield, right? Kaboom, and all heck breaks loose. So, it hasn't happened yet. I agree. I always had a target of around 5% is where things would really, Fed funds overnight rate, 5%. We're not quite there yet. Much like the great financial crisis in 2008, 2009, people were screaming about the subprime mortgage crisis as early as 2007, but it took 2 years to percolate. I hope it's not the same this time, but I sense it may well be.
Right. And what's interesting about this conversation is a lot of people in the mainstream have been championing this idea that, we're getting things under control, inflation, it's going to come back down. And yes, we are beating inflation and yada, yada, yada. And, people like us, we're looking at it and we're going, okay, this might be a momentary blimp in the radar, but at the end of the day, if you zoom out, inflation is still a problem in the large scale and will continue to be a major problem. But, when you've got this situation where, okay, we're waiting for that blow up moment or we're waiting for that crisis moment, just like with COVID, when 40% of all dollars in existence were created during that, that event to keep the markets propped up or keep the global economy propped up. I would assume that this next crisis moment is going to make the COVID print look like child's play.
Potentially, certainly. Every successive financial crisis becomes more severe as you kick the can and move the response up to the highest level, right? Think back into, my first financial crisis was the Latin American debt crisis in 1988. I had just come out of school. There's a form of socializing losses. And then 10 years later, it was long-term capital management. And then 10 years after that, it was the great financial crisis. Each financial crisis involved kicking financial risk up to the balance sheets of the central banks. And then COVID was just printing money extraordinaire. That's the fourth financial crisis. They will become, in the great financial crisis, it only took $900 billion to solve that. Then the COVID crisis took multiples of that. The next one will take multiples of the COVID crisis. I think that's what you're saying. But the solution is always the same. Quantitative easing infinity, debasing the dollar. It's only one game plan because that's the only game plan they have.
And if you listen to some analysts, we got a couple minutes before we got to go to break. So if you got to answer this after as well, then we can. But some analysts are expecting a decade of major deflation due to population circumstances and other circumstances related to the macroeconomic environment. But won't that also, if we do see deflation, won't that also motivate the Federal Reserve and governments to print way more money to fight deflation? I mean, potentially, what are people missing here when they're saying, oh, we're going to have a decade of deflation?
Okay, firstly, deflation is a materially different beast. Remember that the fiat Ponzi requires inflation. If you're a bank that is 25 times levered to its capital base, which means you only have 4% equity capital against $100 or $4 of equity capital against a $100 loan, the other $96 is made up of depositors' money. Think of you have collateral on that loan in the form of real estate. You need the value of that real estate to increase over time to protect your 4% capital base. You don't want losses for shareholders of banks. That requires inflation. So the deflationary aspect changes that entire mathematics. And we have not lived through a deflationary period, material deflationary period in the last 4 decades. So you can ask what it looks like having no experience. I would suggest deflation is a bogeyman that technology should take us into a deflationary environment, but the banking system itself requires inflation. So you're balancing on the head of a pin here, Matthew.
Interesting. Well, we are going to run to break. We have a ton of more questions to ask Mr. Foss, so stick around because we want to tickle your brain and maybe you'll learn something. So we'll be right back. What does it mean to be physically, spiritually, and financially free? The right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness, these were the ideas that made America. But what happens to these ideas when America's money becomes compromised? What do you do when the very thing that you're working for day after day is fundamentally designed to enslave you? Whether it was a conspiracy or not, you won't believe what is about to happen in this country. Arm yourself today with the truth and build your life on the foundations for liberty. Rediscover freedom in the 21st century and grab a copy of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. For just $11.99, you can support this radio show by finding a copy on Amazon or by going to mattjmoore.com. Again, that's mattjmoore.com. Don't wait, because freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. Do you have a strategy to obtain Bitcoin on a regular basis? Do you plan to automate your dollar cost averaging? What about getting all or part of your paycheck in Bitcoin? GetHedge.io is revolutionizing how you get paid. Hedge makes it easy to automatically convert your pay into Bitcoin. Whether you're an employer or employee, you can get started in 4 easy steps. Start getting paid in Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Litecoin. The great part about using Hedge is you can skip the exchange experience altogether and have your Bitcoin sent directly to a wallet you control. Self-custody is key, and GetHedge is giving you the power. Hedge is here to make it easy to stack those sats month after month. Bitcoin, it's a long-term play, so what are you waiting for? Start living on the Hedge, and don't forget to let them know that you heard about Hedge from Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. Use my referral link at mattjmoore.com, or you can go to gethedge.io. Again, that's gethedge.io.
Short-form video content is taking over social media, and with only seconds to capture someone's attention, our team can help you stand out from the crowd. At Sooner Marketing Solutions, we'll produce and publish engaging TikToks, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts. If you feel like you're falling to the wayside and missing out on the exposure that you deserve, click the link in the description to get Sooner results now.
Do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Are you being audited or investigated? Has the IRS sent you a letter demanding payment? You may not owe what they claim. Make this free call to the tax doctor now. Let them negotiate with the IRS on your behalf.
800-262-4182. 800-262-4182. That's 800-262-4182.
Welcome back, America. Yes, you are tuned into the right spot, a place where, oh my gosh, your mind is going to explode because you're going to be learning so much. It's round 2 of America's Bitcoin-focused radio show, and whether you are a Bitcoin lover, newbie, or expert, we have a little bit of everything for you. So we try to make sure that everybody can kind of grasp what we're talking about. But we'll you know what? We're going to even welcome all you non-believers. Maybe you're a hater. You know what? If you don't believe in Bitcoin, maybe you got some nasty things to say. You can always send me out a carefully typed out insult. I'd be happy to read it and send it my way. But this show is literally designed for everybody. It's Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. It's one of America's only syndicated radio shows that is dedicated to that topic known as Bitcoin. So you're going to learn about a lot of different topics, so stay put, buckle up. But on today's episode, we have been chatting about uncharted territory that the world is in, and I mean really in deep. I mean, when it comes to monetary and fiscal policy, boy, do we have a lot to unpack. But we might be in store for, some big things around the corner, and we're going to be asking that question. What does it mean for Bitcoin? What does it mean for sound money assets? But, we're answering these questions today with a very special guest, a guest who has been on the show before, and we're going to introduce him here real quickly. But before I do, I got to give out my regular shout out to Brian LaRue. He's the producer in the house. He's the one making sure that I'm not saying anything naughty. So, Brian, welcome back, man.
Hey, thank you, Matt, so much. Thank you.
Hey, and whether it be these awesome commercials or the intros, the outros, if somebody was like, hey man, this show sounds really top notch, I would love to have a product or a song or a track or something like that made as well as what you guys are doing on the radio. Where would they go and check that out?
Absolutely, Matt. You can go to my website at beyondyouproductions.com. I do different things, all audio production based, and I'd love to work with you if you have any projects.
That's right, man. And we're sitting here recording this show in Blue Studio, which is a part of SoonerMarketingSolutions.com. They are a wonderful marketing company, and they've been so grateful, or we've been grateful, because they've graciously given us this wonderful studio to record our syndicated show in. But like I was saying, let's jump back into it. We don't want to waste any time. We have a wonderful guest. He is a Bitcoin master, and we are just these Padawans here sitting ready to learn. He knows his stuff. when it comes to all things Bitcoin and global debt markets. I mean, this guy really knows his stuff. His name is Greg Foss, and he is a Bitcoin strategist who has made a real name for himself in this world of Bitcoin. Greg, welcome to round two, man. And you know what I love about radio is whether somebody's jumping in the car and maybe they have the radio tuned, they may just be listening here to segment two. So go ahead and introduce yourself once again to the audience.
Sure. Well, Matt, you're too kind. I have spent 35 years as a risk manager with a focus on managing credit risk. I was a junk bond trader in Canada, but my counterparties were all the major Wall Street banks. I focused on distressed debt. I feel I bring to the table a sense of when either a company or a country is beginning to collapse because of a unnecessary, or not unnecessary, but a self-imposed debt burden that is not manageable or sustainable.
That's right. You're throwing people in the lifeboats right now. That's kind of what you're doing, right?
I think Bitcoin is a solution for an unsound monetary strategy. Fiat, which is basically just paper money backed by nothing but the full faith and trust of the government not to debase your fiat, which they do continually. I think Bitcoin is your insurance policy against a mathematically certain fiat debasement. It's only grade 11 math. Don't think that it's anything more than that. It's just that they're not teaching you that grade 11 math because they cannot.
Right. Well, we're talking about this uncharted territory that the world is in, but part of this equation is the total addressable market for Bitcoin in terms of dollars, for today's dollars. What does this mean moving forward when we look at this thing at a 30,000 foot view when it comes to addressable market for Bitcoin in dollar terms?
Yeah. Hey, great question. So again, I like to look at things from top down. Which I'll take the total global assets in the world. And that is an amount of 900 trillion US dollar equivalent. That's total global financial assets in actually 2017 dollars. It hasn't been updated since then by the Institute of International Finance, was 900 trillion US dollars. So that includes $400 trillion of debt, $300 trillion of global real estate, $100 trillion of global equities, and another $100 trillion of, I'll call them incidentals, like gold, which is approximately 10 trillion, but fine art, commodities, currencies. So there's your 400 plus 300 plus 100 plus 100. There's your $900 trillion of total addressable market.
Wow. So what could that put Bitcoin at price wise if
let's play some math games. Okay. So I believe that Bitcoin will become the global reserve asset, essentially replacing US treasuries as the global reserve asset. Remember, people, I'm not saying global reserve currency yet. I'm saying global reserve asset as a store of value. And we'll play some math games. Imagine if Bitcoin captures only 5% of that total addressable market of 900 trillion. So we do some math. 900 trillion times 5% is $45 trillion. Divide that by the total supply of Bitcoin, which is mathematically programmed to only be 21 million. So 45 trillion divided by 21 million is over 2 million US dollars per Bitcoin in today's dollars. Okay? I want to be very clear. That's a price target in today's dollars. In 10 years, today's dollars will be worth a lot more than the dollar will be in 10 years. But playing the game, over 2 million US dollars per Bitcoin in today's dollars at a 5% market share of the total addressable market.
Wow. So, okay, if you're listening to this program and your mind was just exploded, I don't blame you. I mean, we're not giving financial advice here. That's not necessarily what we do, but it might be. I mean, if it was me, if it was Brian, if it was Greg, I mean, we would buy some Bitcoin. We're definitely going down that track, or we already have. But here's the next question for you, Greg. Okay, so we've seen that, when the dollar left the any form of the gold standard or peg to gold, really there was only this perpetual artificial demand that was created by the OPEC nations or Saudi Arabia creating a deal with the United States to create the petrodollar. But we've been seeing, we're kind of at this point where that's kind of switching a little bit, and now nation states around the world are kind of coming together and being like, hey, we don't really like this whole like dollar sanction thing. Let's maybe we should make our own currency that we can, or not even currency, but let's just buy and sell oil between ourselves with our own currencies or with gold or with Bitcoin. Just recently we saw Russia visit with Saudi Arabia and sign some things behind closed doors. What happens if like the BRIC nations start adopting Bitcoin, gold, or some other currency? Won't that increase inflation pressures here at home, since all those dollars would now be coming home, since that artificial demand is basically gone?
Ooh, that's a lot to unpack right there. Well, let's start with the first thing. Yes, the petrodollar is a strategic advantage for the United States because the USA, by printing US dollars, is essentially able to print energy. Think about that for a second. What a strategic advantage that is. And they don't want to lose petrodollar. And Saudi Arabia struck that deal with the USA in terms of keeping the oil priced in US dollars in exchange for protection against some of the enemies. But that is breaking down because Russia, for example, just had their bank accounts frozen and the SWIFT, their treasury reserves frozen. And they don't want that to happen. Imagine having your store of value seized or frozen. What are some of the alternatives? Yes, pricing oil in other currencies, but my favorite is pricing oil in Bitcoin. Why? Because I think Bitcoin is digital energy, and it makes sense for natural resource energy to be priced in digital energy. I'm an engineer, and the law of conservation of energy is very high in my belief system. So why would you sell valuable natural resource energy for fiat money that can be printed out of thin air and has no intrinsic value? I'd much rather sell it for digital energy, fixed supply, Bitcoin. So that's one thing. I think that is coming, and I think there'll be nations like Russia and the BRICS that do that for their own sovereignty. The question became then, does that increase inflation back home in the United States? Absolutely it does, because it does not allow the USA to print energy. They will have to pay for energy like everybody else does with their own hard-earned work energy. So that's a big question that you asked, and there's two ways of coming at it, but I think it's inevitable that oil becomes priced in Bitcoin, which will level the playing field for all these countries that's up until this point haven't had the advantage that the USA has had.
Yeah, it's kind of like we are living in this unique time where us as a generation, we're going to get to witness what it's like to see a world reserve currency change, but then also fiat currencies die. Is this, a lot of people talk about, okay, this, there could be some significant moments where maybe the dollar gets a 30% haircut and, people start moving away from the dollar. Is it a slow, gradual process when something like this happens, you think, or do you think there's going to be some big key moments?
Well, no one knows, but let me be very clear. I do not want the USA to lose reserve currency status, okay? Fiat currencies are all melting ice cubes. They are measured against each other in various ways, but they are all melting. It is just that their rate of decay differs over time. And I believe that the US dollar will be the last fiat currency to fail. It should be. It's the strongest currency in the world, supported by an infrastructure of military and an economic strength. But there are 160 other fiat currencies in the world that will fail before the US dollar. So that is an ongoing process. Essentially, Venezuela and Argentina. Argentina has failed 4 times in my career. 4 times they've defaulted on their debt. Now, you'd think that people would wisen up and not continue to lend Argentina money if they don't get paid back. But, people take a long time to learn. So there will be progressive failures of fiat around the world. The USA eventually will fail because all fiat currencies always fail, but it will be the last. So the process will be visible to the naked eye, but it won't be the US dollar right at the start. And there is a way actually for the US dollar to maintain global reserve currency status. And I could get into that if you'd like. But again, I don't want that to happen. I don't want it to happen quickly because I believe if it happened quickly, we'd be in for a world of hurt.
No, go ahead and share your thoughts on that.
Well, so basically, I think if the USA were to adopt Bitcoin on their balance sheet and thereby essentially back the US dollar with reserves like gold, but with Bitcoin, it would assure the USA to maintain the global reserve currency that other countries would have to adopt. As a fiat currency, there are some advantages of a fiat currency. A fiat currency eliminates the need for barter. It facilitates global trade. And I believe the US dollar as a fiat currency reserve would be adopted by many other nations in the world as basically their checking account, and the savings account should be Bitcoin. So you have 2 different uses of money there. One as a store of value, that's Bitcoin, and the other one is a facilitator of global trade, which is like your checking account, and that would be the US dollar.
So essentially we're talking maybe a game theory situation here where, if the United States wises up to the situation and they actually jump on the bandwagon to do this, it would be beneficial. But I mean, with the political state of our country, what do you think the odds of that happening?
Well, greater than 0, but certainly not not huge. But there's a friend of mine, a young man who I've become a friend of through the Bitcoin community. And he works for the U.S. Space Force.
I love that guy.
And his name is Jason Lowry. If you have not heard of him, I suggest you guys not reach out, but seek him out in terms of his brilliance. He just published his thesis for MIT that he has presented to the President of the United States as well as other major departments in the USA as to the necessity of the USA to adopt Bitcoin for strategic defense purposes. I know it sounds imposing, but at the end of the day, this is one of the smartest young men I've ever met in my life. He works for the U.S. Space Force. He's on his way from Boston down to Cape Canaveral, Florida, and just launched his his thesis on Bitcoin on Amazon today, and it's already a #1 bestseller in multiple categories. So this is the type of stuff that is being presented to the various departments in the United States, and it's my hope and desire that people actually read it and understand how important it is. So it's not a slam dunk by any means, but the chances are greater than 0 because you have smart young men and women like Jason Lowry out there preaching this.
Yeah, and absolutely. You would assume or would think that the Pentagon would be making a lot of noise about this, or at least internally making a lot of noise about this amongst themselves, because it's an important factor. If America wants to stay on top, hey, let's talk to Jason Lowry. Okay, 100%. Yeah, no, absolutely. Brian, what's our clock look like here, buddy?
We got about 2 minutes.
Okay, we got plenty of time. All right, well, Greg, let me ask you this. So when it comes to gold and Bitcoin, do you hold both? I know you're a Bitcoin guy, but tell us a little bit about your strategy going forward.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I'm a risk manager. I never have 100% exposure to any one trade or investment. So no, I do not have only Bitcoin. I actually own other hard assets like gold, like silver, real estate. Obviously, I'm I shouldn't say obviously, but I am a property owner, more than one property. So I like hard assets much like you guys do. I just happen to believe that Bitcoin is the purest and best hard asset. So it is a substantial portion of my portfolio, but not 100%. Let me make sure that I'm clear on one thing. I would never advocate anyone be 100% exposed to Bitcoin. But if they choose to do that because they have a risk tolerance that is way higher than my risk tolerance, I'm not going to tell them not to be. But the only wrong exposure to Bitcoin, fellas, is zero. Owning zero is the wrong exposure to Bitcoin. Everybody needs to own more than 0% allocation to Bitcoin. It's that simple.
I like your approach because you have risk management as the forefront, and we're getting ready to go to break here. But and I love all the Bitcoin bros who are like, they're all in on Bitcoin and stuff. But at the same time, their view of sometimes looking at everything as a poop coin, even gold, or anything else, what are your thoughts on that real quickly? Do you
Well, real quickly, you don't have to have 100% exposure to Bitcoin in order to participate in the greatest asymmetric investment opportunity I have ever seen in 35 years of managing risk, which is to say, if you're 5% exposure to Bitcoin goes up 100-fold from here, because that's what happens when it goes from 20,000 to 2 million. That's 100 times your 5% exposure goes to 500% exposure, everything else being equal. Then you're going to have to manage risk. So you don't have to have 100% exposure to it to participate in the greatest asymmetric opportunity I've ever seen.
Freaking brilliant. I love it. I love it. I love it. This is such a good conversation. All right, guys. Well, stick around because we got round 3 coming up. We'll be right back. The sun, beaches, parties, education, and Bitcoin. This is the recipe for Bitcoin 2023, the largest Bitcoin conference in the world. Ever thought about meeting industry experts? It's the who's who of Bitcoin, and you can't miss it. Join us in Miami, Florida for the annual Bitcoin conference. Use my promo code BTC Radio at checkout. That's BTC Radio. Learn more at mattjmoore.com.
Okay, I'm talking funny because I'm in the witness protection program. I have too much credit card debt and I don't want people to find me.
Okay, I'm just kidding. We're going to talk about credit card debt. Right, those plastic things that we all have in our wallet. Are you in your 50s or 60s and you're still carrying around a mound of credit card debt? Wouldn't it be nice to start banking that money and save a little money for retirement down the road? We help people restructure their credit card debt all the time. We show people how they can get out of credit card debt in months, not years. Listen, you'll be carrying around credit card debt for the rest of your life unless you deal with it right now. We offer a free consultation so you can learn how you can finally wipe out your credit card debt and start saving money. Give us a free call right now.
Call Debt Solutions Network now. 800-593-0298. 800-593-0298. That's 800-593-0298.
Do you have a strategy to obtain Bitcoin on a regular basis? Do you plan to automate your dollar cost averaging? What about getting all or part of your paycheck in Bitcoin? GetHedge.io is revolutionizing how you get paid. Hedge makes it easy to automatically convert your pay into Bitcoin. Whether you're an employer or employee, you can get started in 4 easy steps. Start getting paid in Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Litecoin. The great part about using Hedge is you can skip the exchange experience altogether and have your Bitcoin sent directly to a wallet you control. Self-custody is key, and GetHedge is giving you the power. Hedge is here to make it easy to stack those sats month after month. Bitcoin, it's a long-term play, so what are you waiting for? Start living on the Hedge, and don't forget to let them know that you heard about Hedge from Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. Use my referral link at mattjmoore.com, or you can go to gethedge.io. Again, that's gethedge.io.
Short-form video content is taking over social media, and with only seconds to capture someone's attention, our team can help you stand out from the crowd. At Sooner Marketing Solutions, we'll produce and publish engaging TikToks, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts. If you feel like you're falling to the wayside and missing out on the exposure that you deserve, click the link in the description to get Sooner results now.
Welcome back, America, and welcome back, world. Ding, ding, ding. It is round 3 of America's Bitcoin-focused radio show, and whether you are a Bitcoin lover, maybe you're a noob, or even an expert, we made this show for you. That's right. We even welcome everybody else who, hey, they're just learning. Maybe they disagree with some of the points that we're making, but we want to have a wonderful and enlightening conversation where we're helping people down this journey called Bitcoin. We're handing out orange pills like it's going out of style. But the truth is, this show, Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore, is a radio show that we want to evangelize some of these ideas and get the conversation started, because one of the most important things to have happen is just the conversation, because a lot of people are not even having the conversation about Bitcoin, fiat money, global markets, debt, and so hopefully if you're listening to this show, you've been learning something new, because we cover a lot of different topics. But on today's episode, we've been chatting about the macro outlook for the economy, Bitcoin and gold. It's a new year, and we need to get the skinny on what to expect. And, we're going to ask questions like, hey, is price going to go up, or are they going to go down? Should we expect a bull market anytime soon? What does Bitcoin look like in this picture when it comes to even a recession or global markets? But to help, close out this segment or this show, I've got my handy dandy producer on the board there making me sound good, Brian LaRue. Brian, thanks for bringing us back, buddy.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Hey, just one more time, remind people, if they liked our awesome intros and outros, where would they check out your work?
You can go to beyondyouproductions.com and check out my work there.
That's right. If you go and hire this producer here, you're going to help feed a family. So, no, I'm just messing with you, buddy.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it.
His work is great. His work is excellent. And we're sitting here in Blue Studio in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They're part of SoonerMarketingSolutions.com. So if you've got any marketing needs, go check out SoonerMarketingSolutions.com. All right. Well, on the line to help us put the cherry on top of this conversation is returning guest Greg Foss. And Greg is a Bitcoin strategist who has a long history in understanding global debt markets. Greg, the current situation might be bad. I think that's kind of our analysis. But are you ready to give us some hopium?
Yes, I am.
There we go.
Matthew, you know why? Because I love what you are doing. And I love the fact that people seem to be getting or questioning the system. Just today, or within the last couple of days, just on CNBC, which I'm certain a lot of the viewers will be familiar with, the head anchor, one of the head anchors, Joe Kernan, publicly called out Charlie Munger and Charlie Munger's view on Bitcoin and other crypto. Now, I only believe in Bitcoin. Bitcoin solves the fiat Ponzi. No other digital asset addresses the fiat Ponzi. So Bitcoin is the solution to the fiat Ponzi. And Charlie Munger has publicly said that Bitcoin is rat poison. Well, I'll just say this. If Bitcoin is rat poison, Charlie, then fiat is the rat. Okay. Yeah. And it should be. So Joe Kernan called out Charlie Munger. He basically these are not Foss's words. These are Joe Kernan's words. That Charlie Munger is a 99-year-old curmudgeon who you shouldn't listen to any advice about technology. And I agree with Joe Kernan there. So I'm optimistic because I believe education is key. I believe the world is becoming educated as to the advantages of Bitcoin. And your show is helping. And there's a lot of young kids like Jason Lowry, who we've talked about already on your show, like yourself, that know that there's something implicitly wrong with being able to print yourself to prosperity. Right. If you could print yourself to prosperity by printing fiat money, why do we pay taxes? Yeah. Why is there any poverty in the world? So people are questioning this. And I like that, because the truth is you cannot print yourself to prosperity. Fiat is a disease. And people are understanding that this disease must be cured. And Bitcoin is the cure. It's for our kids, Matthew. Yeah. I'm 60 years old. It's for my children and my children's children, because this system will not continue before it implodes and causes a whole lot of hurt in the world.
I love it. I love that whole analogy. If Bitcoin is rat poison, then fiat is the rat. Man, somebody's going to need some ointment for that burn. That was really good. So let's jump into this, Greg. What are your thoughts around this whole El Salvador Bitcoin bond? Is this a good idea, bad idea? Will other nations do this? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, okay. So here's the key. I went down to El Salvador. I visited the country, and what's happening there is truly remarkable. Let's talk about the macro situation on El Salvador first. All you hear about from the IMF, the International Monetary Foundation, is it's been a failure, their adoption of Bitcoin, when in fact it's been nothing but a huge success, okay? Their top line increased 20%, okay? They are coining, or not, I shouldn't say coining, they are reaping the benefits of Bitcoiners from all over the world that are visiting El Salvador for the benefits of seeing how an economy can function on Bitcoin. The Bitcoin bond itself is going to be a little bit more of a tricky issue for them to navigate. There's a price for everything, in my opinion, and it's just a question of determining the right price, which in bond language means what is the correct coupon to put on that bond. But it'll be a tricky exercise that perhaps some of the people that were advising the president, Bukele, were not as familiar as they should be with the functioning of a efficient bond market. That being said, the Bitcoin adoption in El Salvador is increasing the revenues to the government. It allowed them to pay off their soon to mature bonds 100%. They bought the bonds back in the open market and essentially retired that issue with the proceeds from increased tax revenues. So it's working on a macro basis. Some of the subtleties and the tools like a Bitcoin bond, let's leave that and see how the market balances supply and demand at a price for that issue.
All wonderful points. And Greg, I know Max Kaiser. You've had conversations with him. He, this last bull market, he was making predictions that central banks at some point one central bank would either fail or buy Bitcoin. I believe one of his predictions. But when central banks and nation states start buying Bitcoin, is this primarily a forced move because they have to?
Well, let's start with this. I'm a huge fan of Max. We both had our training in the pits, if you will, not the actual trading pits in Chicago, but the pits of financial transactions. And so he's a wise person who has been a Bitcoin gospel for years now. So yes, I'm a fan of Max's. Adopting Bitcoin at nation state status is going to become a bit of game theory. Okay. Canada, my home country, is a G7 country, which means it's got one of the 7 largest economies, not, including Russia or China, but it's a G7 country amongst the developing and call them freer nations. But we are in big trouble. Our debt metrics are worse than the United States. I wish that Canada would adopt Bitcoin.
All right. Well, Greg, we're just about out of time. I apologize, man. I don't mean to interrupt, but hey, before we go, I need to ask you, if people really enjoyed what they heard today and they really thought, hey, man, this guy knows his stuff, where would they check you out? Where would they find your work?
Well, I just want to say thank you for having me, Matt. I really like your show and what you're trying to do to educate the people. I'm on LinkedIn under Greg Foss, but also my bigger platform happens to be Twitter, which blows my kids away. You can follow me on Twitter at Foss, Foss, Greg Foss. So at Foss, Greg Foss. I have a blue check mark that I'm happy to pay for to verify my identity and help the world understand the most beautiful asymmetric trade I've ever seen in my life. Asymmetric opportunity, I should say, called Bitcoin. Don't own zero.
I love it. I love it. Well, guys, this has been Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore, the radio show that is focused, that's right, on Bitcoin. And until next time, my friends, guess what? We will see you next week. Same time, same place. Here, remember, Bitcoin is changing the world. Don't get left behind. Join us every week so we prepare you for this new digital age.